All right, can y'all hear me okay with the microphone? Is it working? All right, very good. Well, thank you for attending this session. Oh, and I have my clicker and lost my clicker. So anyway, we're going to talk a bit about communication. We had started talking about that at the last session. No, thanks. Appreciate it. Were there any issues real quickly? I know we ran out of time. The last one was my fault. Any questions or issues from last session? We talked about culture. We talked about risky behaviors and trying to minimize that. We talked about the importance of setting up the system to help people out. Anything to discuss before we jump right back into some similar materials? Yes, ma'am. Okay. And when you say redundancy, is that like double checking checks and balances? Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about that. Sorry, I don't know. I just don't. You stumped me. Any other questions I can't answer? So the double check isn't. So is it kind of pencil whip through just so we can get it done and save time? Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. As a system, I don't know. I really don't.
It's hard to implement that when you're in a system that believes that you're going to do it right the first time every time. Why should I check it? I always do it right.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Are there any benefits to the double checking that you all see or the redundancy? So I see some people doing this and some doing no. I don't know. We are going to talk about other systems like near-miss reporting, minor injury reporting, incident analyses, training, and some other things at the end of this, if time permitting. So we'll talk about some of that stuff I know a little bit more about. Any other issues before we jump in? Bless you. All right, I want to finish up on the communication because we rushed through, and I think it's fun, and I think it's interesting, and I think it's important. And like I said earlier, opening things up, if you've got an issue, bring it to people's attention. I think you have real problems when people stop listening and people stop talking. And sometimes there's just no pulse on how things are going. I'll just, real quick example. In Kentucky, years and years ago, we did a full-on assessment. I spent 5 days doing interviews with people. At the end of that 5-day session, I met with the plant manager, and every single person I talked to was miserable at this place. Miserable. I'm telling you, they were either mad, scared, angry, or some combination of all of it. It was just terrible. So after 5 days of this, I'm writing the same answer down. Describe management support for safety. It stinks. You know, like I've typed that in 17 times now. I want to go home. Anyway, end of the week, I meet the plant manager, and he's like Mr. Rogers, nice. He's like, hey, how you doing, buddy? Good, you know. And I'm like, it's really kind of awkward because I've spent the whole week dealing with miserable people saying how bad their culture is. And as I'm talking to him, I'm like, well, we got a problem. It seems like everybody around here is either mad or scared, you know. And he's like, okay, what else? You know, like, next item. I'm like, no, we got to talk about this a little. Sometimes communication's so bad and it gets so shut down that you have all kinds of problems. Then you have an explosion that kills 7 people, you know, on an offshore rig because there were all kinds of indicators going on in the first place, but people weren't talking about it because they were scared to or because they didn't want to. And then all of a sudden something real bad happens, and that's a lot of times when they call us. You know, they call us to come in because all those warning signs along the way have been ignored. So open communication, my point is really important. We talked about the sheriff, diplomat, investigator. Real quickly, show of hands, if you rated yourself to be personally a sheriff, please raise your hand. And raise it up high for a second so other people can see. If you think you're a sheriff. If you think you're a diplomat, raise your hand. Now, Julie, they were telling me you're an investigator. That's what Shelby. Shelley. That's what she was whispering. Oh, is that what it is? Okay. I'm not trying to pick a fight or anything. Sorry. I was just trying to have some fun. Sorry, Julie. Never mind. If you're an investigator, raise your hand. All right. So we were talking about earlier, and you can really be a combination of all three. You know, I'm joking around about the whole floor, but really, if you are flexible in your communication style, you can do all three. The problem, I think, is when you can't. When you've got one style. Let's say, for instance, I'm a sheriff, like you. We're both sheriffs, right? I'm strong on the sheriff, and I'm working with someone, I'm talking with them, and it's not working. And my plan B is talk louder. You know what I mean? It's not good. Just a quick sports analogy. Mike Tyson used to always say, everybody's got a game plan until they get hit, which I think is kind of funny. It's like you got to have a plan B, because again, if doing more of what you're doing is not the answer. So some takeaways I wanted to talk about earlier. First of all, know your strengths and weaknesses. If you're a sheriff, great. That's your style. But if I were to ask you to rate them, and you're really strong sheriff, but you're really low on the other two, and some of y'all may have had that, that's just a little warning. Maybe I need to shore up my weaknesses. Maybe I need to be a little more diplomatic. Maybe I need to be a little bit more of an investigator sometimes too. So flexibility is king. If you can do all three and you had trouble picking just one, that's probably a good sign. A couple questions I've got for you before we move forward. First question, is your main communication style the same or different at home versus at work? Think about that for a second. So I don't know if I need it. So sheriff, diplomat, investigator are the styles. I've got a list up here if you can read it. Maybe you can, maybe you can't, of each of the strengths and weaknesses. We talked about them earlier. If your main style is different at home versus at work, please raise your hand if your main style is different. All right, about almost half of you. Why is it? I'm just curious. You have two. Are you schizophrenic? If you're schizophrenic, you get a pass, huh? Oh, I thought you said I have two natures. I'm like, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the teenage clause, that throws everything out. You have to be a sheriff-like there. Okay. So you got teenagers, right? Other reasons? I'm just curious. And maybe the nature of your job, the type of work you do may necessitate it. Yeah. That's a good thing. Psychologists call that self-monitoring. A guy named Snyder in '79 came up with high versus low self-monitoring. High self-monitors are better able to do two things. One, size up their situations, new situations, better than most. And two, respond accordingly. They are social chameleons was another term for the same idea. So that's a good thing. I'm a better communicator. How I deal with my teenager at home versus how I deal with my boss or whoever else may depend greatly. Like with kids, if you got more than one kid, you know how you motivate one and treat one may not be necessarily the same as the other. It's the same principle. So that's a good thing if that's how you are. That's good. You're probably a better communicator. High self-monitors, by the way, are more successful in organizational settings in general than low ones. Just not surprising, but it's true. So that's one consideration. Another thing is, now this one's tougher. Appreciating styles that are different than our own. And I'll get off the sheriff, diplomat, investigator here in just a second. But think about this. Think about if you have a significant other or spouse or loved one. If you live with someone, I'm trying to be politically correct here. If you live with somebody, sorry, I had too much of that dessert. Did y'all have that dessert with the vanilla? Oh my God, I had way too much. My brain's like in super slow motion now. If you live with somebody, think about their communication style and think about your own for a second. Again, just out of my own, nothing but curiosity. Sheriff, diplomat, investigator. If your style is different than your spouse or partner or significant other or cohabitator, whatever, if their styles are different, please raise your hand if your style is different than theirs. And again, I ask, how come? Most of you raised your hand. Why? Huh? That's why you get along? Because you got the differences? Huh? You balance? I heard some people say opposites attract. I saw someone on the Today Show say that's the old way of thinking. The new way of thinking is opposites attack. And divorce rates are high. There's maybe some truth. But I find it interesting that most people say their style is different than that person. So maybe it's a good thing. I don't know. Maybe it's better balance, like you said. But regardless of style, one, be flexible in your own style. Two, be true to yourself, which you're good at. Know your strengths, but show up your weaknesses. And three, appreciate styles different than your own. Think about that for a second. That's tough. If we were all sheriffs in here working together, we might get a lot done, but there might be some bloodshed, along the way. It might be tough. Or, if we're all diplomats in here working together, what's the problem now? Right, but we're getting along. Hey, man, how you been? Good to see you. Hey, doing all that stuff. So a mix is good, and sometimes we don't appreciate that. As a sheriff, I don't see the good side to the diplomat and investigator, etc. So regardless of style, we have some guidelines to consider. Respecting people's opinion, even if you disagree, that's tough. If you can do that like in political stuff, as we get into the next round of politics next time around, if you can see the other side and respectfully disagree, more power to you. That's tough to do sometimes. That's a good litmus test to that first bullet. Ask questions to facilitate discussions, especially with teenagers. If you've got teenagers, this works really well. A guy named Rogerian therapy, came up with this term of active listening, or at least he was a big part of it. And that is, when someone comes up with you with an issue, repeating back what they're saying is sometimes the best response. Instead of, you need to do your homework before you do this, 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 and this, sometimes asking questions gets the conversation going, and they may say, I know I got to get my homework done before I do X, Y, and Z. Asking questions to facilitate discussion, especially with safety, is a smart, smart way to go. MBWA, I mentioned that before, I think management by walking around, that's part of, you can't communicate without being out there, so spending time with folks on the floor, doing the job is important. Be constructive and positive, tasteful humor. For you diplomats that are in here, consider this. That's pretty good. Confront problems as soon as they occur. You sheriffs, that's not a problem. You got an issue, you're going to bring it up. My wife is a sheriff. I do not have a problem with her letting me know if I am making a mistake of, whatever. Because she's a sheriff. It's just, I'm going to hear it, and that's good and bad. It's just the way it is. Some of us that are diplomats have trouble with it. I have something that bothers me. Have you ever had this happen, you diplomats in here, where something bugged you? Someone may have said something at work, or somebody said something and it bothered you, and the more you thought about it, it like really started bugging you, you know what I mean? And it's like a couple days go by, and then you see that person 2 weeks later and you're ready for battle. Why does that happen? Because we didn't deal with it right away. So I think it's smart for us for safety issues and just in general. When issues come up, deal with them right away. Little things stay little instead of getting bigger. Give recognition one-on-one. Give praise more often. Praise is a good thing. It works, and it's usually better one-on-one. Sometimes we praise people in public. My boss tells a story. In 3rd grade, his teacher said, way to go, Scotty, you got straight A's again. What do you think happened to him during recess? All right, I'm going to get the crap beat out of him. He relives the story, it's therapy or something. Sometimes that can be a bad thing. Y'all coming up to me in front of folks I'm working with, hey, way to go, you're the best, great job. They may be doing the old kissing up and all this other stuff when you leave. So generally speaking, one-on-one's better. It seems more genuine. It seems more personal. Plus, I don't have 14 people making suck-up noises or whatever, when you leave. So one-on-one, smarter way to operate. When giving corrective feedback, one-on-one also matters. Show concern for people's well-being and don't nag. Say what I have to say and move on. We covered these. There are levels of listening, and it's a cliche, so I'll just make it quick. But my wife is very good at detecting when I am pretending to listen. And it's always when golf is on, and it's always when I'm sitting in my recliner, and she will say, what did I just say? And like I said, I know it's a cliche, but it's scary. She's little, but I'm scared of her. And I had the option of either trying to fake my way through it, which I've done, something about her dad and fixing the fence because we got these 2 dogs. Anyway, long story. If I can piece it together, we're going to go work on the fence on Sunday. I remember. I get all mad. I'm like, I don't know why you test me. I don't know why you do that to me. But I've done that and been completely wrong, and it is a gamble. You pay for it for a long time. So anyway, pretending is where we can't. Selective is where you may be some of the time. Sitting where you're sitting, it's tough. Even for an hour, it's tough. Sitting there listening, especially when you're full. It's hard. So I may talk about something, you kind of zone out. You're thinking about, maybe your grocery list, or you're thinking about what you're going to watch on TV or whatever. And then I'll say something about teenagers, and all of a sudden, boom. And so then you're listening. Okay, now teenagers, right. Dang teenagers, blah, blah, blah. And then you kind of zone out again. That's where we are a lot of the time. If we can get to the highest levels, 4 and 5, active, empathic, that's where we want to be. We want to show empathy. I feel where you're coming from. And again, as a communicator, if you can do that, and we'll talk about ways of doing that here in a second, we're better off. So I want to keep moving forward. I statements are opinions. State your opinions as opinions instead of facts. And this will be, I think, the last story I tell maybe. But it's just, when I was a kid, my dad would say stuff, and he would call it a fact. I got caught sneaking out for prom with some wine. My dad said, son, that's going to get you in trouble. That's fact. Well, I had some fun too, But he would say a fact for anything. He would just say something. He'd say, well, that's fact. I had a problem one time and with my gums. I had a little gum. I was a little kid. My gums got swollen. I still don't know what it was. My dad said, we're going to have you gargle in hot salt water. It's going to fix you right up. That's fact. And so we did, right? And it made it like worse. Like all of a sudden my gums are like protruding. It's disgusting. And we went to the hospital. And I got a shot, literally a shot in my gum. For a little kid, that's scary. I remember that. And I remember going home. My mom and my dad in the car. My mom was yelling at my dad. And his response was, we didn't use enough salt. That's fact. And I'm telling you today, we'll joke about that. Like we were building an arbor a couple years ago, part of vacation anyway. And I would joke about something. Well, throw some salt on it, Dad. And he laughs, but I know in his heart of hearts he believes we didn't use enough salt on that. But anyway, that way of talking, that way of thinking, that way of projecting things can kind of be irritating. Because even when he's right, it can be irritating when he's saying it's a fact or when it comes across that way. So you sheriffs, pay attention to this one. Because sometimes we come across a little overbearing, even if I'm the position of power, person in that power, even if I'm exactly 100% correct. Maybe I still want to be honest. I don't want to be floofing around. But I also don't want to be overbearing. And I want to make sure that we're having some of those discussions. So this is maybe softening your approach sometimes. Must, never, and always, that's another one. These are trigger words for bad emotion. And if you don't believe me, go home tonight, if you live with somebody, like I said, and try it. And if they get mad, say it was just an experiment. This guy told me to do it. Try it. Seriously, tell them that you never do the laundry. You always complain about that. Just see what happens. I mean, I'm not kidding, it's an invitation for confrontation. And so unless you're trying to pick a fight, avoid those three words. Must, never, and always. It just gets people irritated in like 100 miles an hour. Other considerations, don't interrupt. Ask open-ended questions. Eye contact's a big part of it. Vocal tone. Please raise your hand if, like me, the louder you get, the dumber you get. Please raise your hand. All right, so for at least a handful of us, we got to be real careful. It's like a chart. Loud, this is IQ on this side, goes down. And so not only do you say stupid things you regret, and like for me, I can hit the back of my mind saying, dude, shut up. You're not making any sense, and you're getting somebody irritated. So if I start getting loud, I say dumb things. What's the person's response likely to be back towards me? It's going to be loud too, or they shut down. It's not going to be good is my point. So again, final thoughts here in the communication. Be mindful. And I'll tell you what, another one is that personal space. This happened to me 2 months ago. I just told you I'm on all kinds of medication for sinus infections, whatever. I'm not contagious or anything. But a couple months ago, I'm a germaphobe. I'm on the road every week. I cannot get sick. I'm too busy, just like you. I'm doing a session like this. And during a break, this guy was real excited about something I was talking about. I have no idea. We were doing an all-day thing, right? And he's like right on top of me like this, like nose to nose. If you have people that get close talker on you, you know what I mean? And so he's talking, and he's sick. So while he's talking, he's like doing all this. So tell me some more. And I'm just like, oh, my God. And I'm literally like walking back, like while we're talking, you know. And he's like inching towards me. We're like walking down the room together, you know, very slowly. And I finally got a chair. Like imagine a chair. He's there, and I'm talking, and he's going that way, and he's going this way. I'm like, what do you say? It's kind of hard. So just, again, you sheriffs in particular, be mindful. That personal space can make people uncomfortable. And getting all touchy-feely, some of y'all may be touchy-feely, some of us aren't. So just be mindful of that too. So anyway, I want to move forward, and I'm going to show you a couple more slides, and we'll go to the next presentation here in a second. Nonverbal communication matters too, all right? It's not just what you say. We want to be careful with our word selection. We want to be careful with the setting and tone of voice, but body language matters. I want you all to tell me in these next couple pictures, what are the emotions at play? Nobody's talking, but emotion is being conveyed. Ready? What's the emotion? Happy. Love. He said it all cynical. Was that a touchy-feely love or a... Okay, good. Love, happiness. Anything else? What'd you say? So it's all good. How about this one? That same guy that was trying to get me sick, hey, don't get mad at me, he said, that's before and that's after. I'm like, man, that's not appropriate. That's not funny. How about this picture? I like this picture. I don't know why. I just found it on the internet one day and put it up there just because I like it. What do you see in that? Curious? Huh? Unsure? Okay. What else? I see sort of a peacefulness. I don't know how to describe it, tranquil or peaceful. Usually it's good. Sometimes there's some negative, but by and large, people see good things in it. Love, relaxation, curiosity, whatever. But again, no one's saying, hey, by the way, I'm curious. You get a sense of it. Why? Body language. It tells us a lot. How about her with the... That's how I feel after that vanilla thing. What'd you say? Guilt, right? Or I was looking for jovial with this guy. And he looks strong, right? Okay, well. Right. I think I just need to update some of these, but okay. So here's some things to consider with body language. Eye contact. Don't fidget. That's one of those things. The guy next to me, we have day-long meetings, man. They get long. And this guy will click his pen, and he sits next to me, and he's my boss. I have a bunch of bosses. And it's really hard because it's like click, 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 and then he stops. And like I'll look at him, I look at his pen, I look at him. I'm hoping but he doesn't see it. He's like, boom, click, click, click. You get all twitchy and like it makes you crazy. Be careful with that fidgety stuff. That's a problem. Another problem is doing this, which I do a lot, and I've tried not to when I'm doing something like this. How does this come across if you're talking to somebody and they're doing this? Right, and the truth is it's comfortable or you're cold or it's relaxing, but again, it may project the wrong thing, so it's just one of those things to be mindful of. My big boss, this guy Geller, who's kind of a big guy in this field, points when he talks because he does so many presentations. He points. And I was sitting next to him. I'm going to get off the stage for just a second, camera dude, sorry. But I was like really, really close, like from here to here, from me to Heather, like this. So he's him and I'm me. Actually, flip it. You're me and I'm him. I really told you that. Food coma, sorry. But he's talking to me, and he's pointing like this. Like every time he's saying something, he's pointing. And I'm like, so I stopped talking. I just started pointing back. So I'm just, huh. And finally, he's like, why are you pointing at me? And I'm like, man, why are you pointing at me? You know? It just comes across to me when somebody's pointing their finger or doing one of those deals like you're kind of being talked down to. You know what I mean? So that's another thing just to be mindful of with the body language. I saw on AOL that this is supposed to be a sign of expertise, doing this. I don't know if it's true. I'm trying to get a raise, so when I'm in a meeting, I talk, I'm doing that. Like, seriously, I do. I'm like, I believe we need to consider. Any other ones you can think of? I'm trying to think. I usually can think of more of them. I can't think of any other ones right now. Anything else for body language to be aware of that's good or bad? Okay, is leaning back good or bad? Is bad? Does it look too sloppy or something? Huh? Okay, I'll buy that. So leaning forward, you're engaged, we're having that discussion, good. Any other ones you can think? I'm just curious if you have any other ones. That's all I can think of. Okay, is that fun and dynamic or distracting and irritating? Am I doing that? Okay, I'm just checking. All right. So part of it is the choice of words. Part of it is tone of voice. A big part of it, I think. Part of it is listening skills, and part of it is that body language. So let's just do a real quick wrap up. Let's do a quick hitter exercise, and then we're going to, and that'll give us time because we've got to switch can you switch them now? Thanks. So as we're switching that over, just real quickly, of the things we covered in the communication section, in the last session and this one, what stands out to you as being the most key aspects of good communication? Listening skills, all right. Anything else? Yes, ma'am. And being flexible in it too, right, I think? I mean, if you're, what style are you? You're a diplomat, good. So and if she can be a sheriff when she needs to, put the sheriff hat on and go, that's a good thing. And if she can be the investigator too, then she's more, but knowing your strengths and being true to that's good too. Thank you. Anything else? I would say too, for safety, one-on-one's a big, big, big part of it. So we covered a lot on that part with the communication, and we talked about behavior before. Let me spend some time on behavior for a moment. And I don't know how deep we want to go into this. This is Behavioral Analysis 101. I had mentioned earlier, we have the system that's encouraging us to be risky. You have human nature that's encouraging us to be risky. Here's an example. Strong consequences are certain, soon, significant. We know they're going to happen. They're going to happen right away. When it does happen, it's a big deal. Driving fast in your car, saving time, certain, soon, significant, versus getting a ticket. May not happen. So as a result, a lot of us will speed at least some of the time. And here's a more detailed, I'm not sure how in-depth I want to go on this, but at least I want to give you a general idea of Behavior Analysis 101. So on the left-hand side, we've got things that get our attention for speeding. I'm late, I got a hot car, whatever. Versus the other side, discouraging it. Police car. Maybe your kids are in the car, so you go slower. Or if you have annoying teenagers at the moment in the car, you may go faster. I don't know, it goes either way. But that's an activator. Activators simply get our attention. Behavior is what I'm doing, and the consequences are why I'm doing it. So think about this simple example of speeding. Saving time and having fun. Certain, soon, significant. Those are all powerful. Yes means strong, no means weak. On the other side, what bad could happen? Well, you get a ticket or get in a wreck, really. Is it guaranteed? No, it's uncertain. It would be soon, it could be significant, but it's not guaranteed. As a result, we do it. So in this example, the stronger consequences are for taking the risk versus going the right speed. I'm going to do an abbreviated exercise on this. I'm going to take 90 seconds, and I want you all to think about and discuss briefly what are some risky behaviors, either for you or your patients in everyday settings. Let's take a couple of minutes. We'll do a top 5 list. Once you get 5, stop. But 5 risky behaviors on the job. It could be improper lifting, transporting a patient. It could be improper labeling of various medication. It could be whatever. But I want to analyze 1 or 2 of them real quick, and then we'll move forward. Any questions? Top 5 list of risky behaviors on the job. Any questions? Yeah, sorry, group exercise. Talk about it. Have one person jot down a top 5 list. We'll report out in a second. All right, let's go ahead and see what you came up with. Hopefully most of you have 5 or close to it. What's the first thing that you all came up with? Someone throw out an answer, please.
Unshakable sense of certainty, and that's a fact.
That's a fact. Sound like that easy, Dad. Right. Yeah, and again, that could be, why is that reinforced? I've been doing it that way for 30 years. I may have expertise in my field. There may be a lot of things, never had a problem before, that reinforce that. That's a person factor that can lead to all kinds of risky behaviors. I can get away with it because of the certainty of it's not that big a deal, it's not going to happen to me, may not be a real, whatever. So that's a good one. It's a person factor. What else? Unshakable. And what are the behaviors associated with know-it-all that are bad? Not listening to other people, not being open to suggestion. You know, they're talking about medical error and things that can go wrong. You know, I mean, there's a lot of bad things that can happen if I don't listen to those folks around me, especially if they're helping me. What else are risky behaviors? What do you mean by workaround? Shortcut? Yeah, and there may be 6 million examples y'all could give. That whole double-checking thing you're talking about, that could be a shortcut. I'll sign off on yours, you sign off on mine. Okay. Right. I'm making the assumption that you did everything right, and you may be making the assumption the person before you. We may be 10 people removed on whether or not we're handling the patient the right way. Good point. Any other ones? I'm sorry, guys. I'm starting to get scared about this patient identification, man. I thought that was sort of a given. Like, that was one thing for sure it wasn't a problem. That's the guy. We don't know what's wrong with him, but that's the guy. At least, you know. That's scary. Yikes. That's scary. Yikes, yikes, yikes. And again, that fatigue is an environmental factor. Well, it's a person factor driven by maybe schedules or whatever else. But yeah, that fatigue is a real danger. And again, that's part of the, maybe I'm wrong on this, but, you know, med school and residency and all that, I mean, all I picture are, you know, the maybe it's a source of pride, all the hours you work. Yeah, imagine that. I mean, you're just increasing the probability of something going wrong. It's a numbers game. I mean, life is a matter of probabilities with injuries. It really is, and that's a good point. Very. Is it Julie? Is that right? I think Julie's more investigated. That was good. That was thorough. Um, okay. All right. I've made enough wife comments today. I'm done with that. But let's take PPE just for a second. And if we went through all those examples you're talking about, I want you all to think about what's the consequence. Consequences are, especially the shortcuts, especially the real behavioral ones, the shortcuts, they're not wearing the PPE. If you look at it, I don't know which screen to look at. If you're looking at it, saving time, convenience, I mean, aren't those the main issues? Those are certain and significant. They're all powerful, so we do it. The flip side is either getting hurt, hurting somebody else, or getting in trouble, as I see it. Are those certain? No. You never had an exposure without the PPE. So is it going to be soon? Maybe, maybe not. Is it significant? Maybe, maybe not. But again, we are naturally inclined to be risky. And that's why we need to be looking out for each other and have the system right. So I think we're set on that. And I want to talk about behavioral safety. I heard you all talking about physician checklists. Can somebody tell me in about 30 words or less what that is? When you have physician checklists, am I saying it right? What are they? So as a physician, I've got to do 10 things on this card. Is that right? Who checks it? Do I check it off myself whether or not I did it? Mm-hmm. So we're all working together. You see me doing it and you check it off? Right? Does that sound right? You're looking at me like... Okay. You could have a checklist. So anyway, we do checklists in lots of companies too. And the idea, and there's lots of different ways of doing it. Sometimes you've got hourly folks, I would say hourly folks with each other. Sometimes you have management type folks doing them. Really, there's a million different ways of doing it. I'm not sure what would work best for you all. That's why I was asking the questions of who actually fills them out. Is there any discussion afterward? Is it a self-checklist? Do people pencil whip through sometimes just to get the cards? Because sometimes you have the quotas, you got to get them. Those are the questions I have. But that's what we're talking about here when I say behavioral safety. So in the next couple slides, I'll go as fast as you want me to or as slow as you want me to. But we spend a lot of time doing this, and the idea is you observe. Here's an example of a card. You may not be able to see that. Hopefully, do you all have handouts of these? If not, I think we can get, Mary's got them. She can send them out to you. But we've got an example of a checklist. And on this checklist, we've got things like patient mobility, communication, access, communication, confirm, transfer, proper use of PPE, hand washing before and after patient contact, combative patient, body mechanics, bed table at proper height, neutral spine, eyes on, I imagine strains and sprains would be just a mess everywhere. And my wife's been sick, unfortunately, a fair amount. And being in the hospital, it's like there's a billion things, it seems to me, from a body position standpoint that could really be a concern. So you would have a card that targets that. It's basically, like you're saying, like a team approach. Regardless of my position, when I'm lifting and bending and doing all that stuff, you're checking to see if I'm doing it safe or risky. So two things happen. You have conversations. Here's another one. Here's one for a nursing station. Let me just say this real quick. So you've got things like, I can't read it on the screen. Hips positioned to the back of chair with hips slightly higher than knees. Upper seated posture with adequate back supports. Avoid contact pressure at wrists and elbows during computer use. So in a nursing station, at that computer, you've got certain things. It's more of an ergonomics, I guess, checklist. But again, the idea is observe. Two things are happening. You're getting data. You're finding out what's behaviorally speaking. Let me back up. I know we're getting in that lost. Remember I was talking about the zone in and out. I got you in the zone out mode. Zone in for just a second because we're wrapping up this section. Behaviorally, when injuries happen, there's almost always risky behavior. National Safety Council, 90%. I think it's 99%. I literally do. If these cards are done the right way, you can find out where you're likely to get hurt because you got 30% safe for back for proper lifting. PPE use is 99%. We don't need to keep worrying about that. We got to worry about, bending, lifting, or getting automated lifts or whatever else. So that's one thing. The other thing is people talking to each other. You get communication. You find better ways of doing the job. More of that interdependence type thing going. That's the idea. Questions or comments? All right, we're going to move along rapidly. Any questions? Next topic, attitudes. Attitudes matter. I mentioned the caveman attitude. How do you want to motivate people? Using the carrot or the whip? Quick show of hands if you say the carrot. Raise your hand if you think it's the whip. Raise your hand if you really think it's the whip, but you don't want to say it because you know it's probably not the right answer. Nah. I had one guy say you got to whip the horse with the carrot. I have no idea what that means, literally. It's bothered me for years. But those bad attitudes can happen when we don't get involved. And actively caring is a choice we're making to get involved and help out. My opinion, from what I understand of some of the jobs that you all are doing, is I think you've got to have a heart of gold, really, in some ways. I used to be a social worker, and I used to say that about social workers dealing with troubled kids, trying to get them on the right track. I'm making $5.25 an hour. That's a tough job. You either, and I think helping out people in this regard too. And maybe I'm naive about it, but that's sort of the sense that I get too. So maybe you all are naturally like that. You have more, I don't know, maybe you're more actively caring by nature. But how we feel and think about helping out other people is big. And it's not just empowerment, even though that's important. It's going out of our way. And again, the reason I'm doing that caveat, I don't want to do the preaching to the choir thing, but I want you to consider that it's a family issue. And there are personality factors. In a moment, I'm going to give you 5 person factors that predict whether or not you will help out other people. Before we do that, I want to reinforce the notion of family and tell you one more quick story about my dad, just because I think it's fun to tell stories about my dad. And I tell them every story. But 3 years ago, we built an arbor. My parents live in San Antonio, Texas. If you build an arbor, you have post-hole diggers. You've got to do this and this. And it stinks. It's hard. The ground's hard as a rock. I'm burning vacation days while my dad's whistling, painting the fence. So if you see that door there, he's got about that much to go, second story up. And instead of just coming back down, moving the ladder over and finishing, my dad puts the paint can in his teeth. He's 70 years old. He puts the paint can in his teeth, holds the roof, and it starts like, how am I going to do it? Starts like hopping the ladder over. And I'm watching him, and my response is, Dad, what? I can't tell you what I said. Sorry. What the heck are you doing? What the heck are you doing? And his response, he stopped. He's like, I'm working, son. What the heck are you doing? Sorry. Woo, it's close. What the heck are you doing? And we go back and forth. And finally, he comes down, moves the ladder over, says, are you happy now? And goes up and finishes. And I was happy. 1, he's not going to fall because it was scary. 2, he quit whistling. He was just too cheery. It was my last nerve, and he quit, which made me feel better. But I'm going to do that every single time. And I'm going to do that every time because he's dangerous, and he needs someone to say, be careful, slow down, etc. Why? Because he's family. And again, I'm not trying to get all kumbaya here, but especially the type, my impressions of the type of work you're doing and the cohesiveness with 3 or 4 people you may be working with, if you're a team and you all feel that with each other, that happens naturally. You're looking out for people. You're naturally doing it. It's easy. And you expect it. Oil rigs are like that in the sense that you got 4 or 5 guys working together a lot of hours. You all do some of the 12-hour shifts, 10-hour and 12-hour shifts. They do that too. They sleep in tents together. I mean, it's really, and you can see a good crew versus a bad crew on the same oil rig. And it's night and day. It's unbelievable. And so my point is if we can get that actively caring happening and we have that family mentality, we help out. Otherwise, we don't. And you've got 4 or 5 people doing 4 or 5 different things. I do my thing, you do your thing, leave me alone. Not healthy. It's not good for safety. It's not good for other people's safety. It's not good for anything. So we want to figure out how to get those person factors higher. Let's talk about it. So this is personality psychology 101 in terms of helping. These 5 predictors determine whether or not you get involved and help out. Self-confidence or self-effectiveness, same thing. Personal control, self-esteem, optimism, belonging. I want to talk about each one briefly, and then we're going to do one more exercise. And 3:30 is our wrap-up time. But I want to do an exercise on how do we get more of these person factors on a day-to-day basis. How do we get more actively caring? So here's an example. Guy getting chewed out, what'd your supervisor say? That old school way of hollering, screaming, some of you sheriffs may be getting nervous about this, that old school way doesn't work. It may work in doses, but you wear people out. Coaches in professions that are yelling and screaming, they're at places for 1 or 2 years. You know what I mean? Because they wear people out. If that's how you operate, if that's how you motivate, you're going to have a lot of resistance, a lot of bad things over time. So we don't want to do that. So in terms of self-esteem, general considerations. Drive fear out of the work environment. Open things up. Don't be afraid to discuss if you think maybe something was done wrong. Those are all ways of improving self-esteem. Self-confidence, good training. Do y'all do computer-based training now? Because I tell you, in industry, it's everywhere. Are y'all doing a lot of it? Is it good? I mean, I'm not trying to do a loaded question here, but I guess I want to know. Is it good? Is it helpful? Is it a good refresher? Or is it one of those kind of just hit the button, get to the end of it, someone give you answers type deal? Yes, yes, okay. You know, all I'm saying there is spice it up a little. You know, doing some different kinds of training can be good. Doing some refresher training. I've been doing this for 30 years. You were telling me, you know, I've been seeing the nursing profession change over 30 years. You know, if I'm getting this training, I've literally seen it. I have seen training videos that, first of all, are like beta. They're not even DVDs. They're Betamax, whatever the heck that was called. And they've got like bell bottoms and 70s music and like flared out hair. You know what I mean? I'm like, you've been showing this same dang video in December the last 40 years. It's time for an update. You know what I mean? So all I'm saying on the training is, you know, hands-on, interactive can be a good thing. It's good for my competence. Mentoring's big too. You've been here for 20 years. I've been here for 2. I need to learn from you, and hopefully you're telling me the right things. That's a big part to me of that self-effectiveness, that informal training I get. Personal control is the strongest predictor of helping out. Give people that are on the job, doing the job, control. Procedures that are followed, if you have 12 procedures, people doing the work should have some say-so on what those procedures are. For you, it may not be an issue. For a lot of companies I work with, the procedures don't make sense. And they're 14 pages long, and they're written in language nobody understands. Keep it simple. And that's part of that personal control. People that are on the job, doing the job, should have say-so in how things operate a lot more than they do, instead of being a passive recipient. Belonging's a big part of it too, having that sense of we're all in it together. Attitudes matter. I mentioned the complainer perspective already. You know, that there's always something wrong. It's always somebody else's fault. You know people like that? They wear you out, man. Because that's what they think. The feeling is resentment, frustrated, they're always angry. It's like, man, you don't even want to be around them. But those complainers can multiply. That's the scary thing. Here's an example. I'm about to get an attitude. I had to change how the hand was drawn in that picture. The spectator. That's where we are sometimes. Kind of on the fence, go with the flow, whatever. And I'm like that. I mean, we all have our days like that. You may go through periods of time like that. We just kind of, and there's nothing wrong with that now and again. We want to get here, though, because we can get kind of indifferent and go with the flow. We want to be champions. That doesn't mean I don't have bad days. I have my bad days and issues. But generally speaking, I'm looking for good in every situation. Change is not always bad. Most of us resist change. New system comes along, it's hard. And I'm with you. It's hard to change. Champions at least understand you want to grow. This is the opposite. Like I said earlier, I've been here 35 years, blah, 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 blah. As soon as I hear that, my brain is like, I'm sorry. But my thinking is, man, I'm already tired. You haven't even started talking and I'm already tired because I know it's going to be something about how great the past was and how every change is bad. Well, champions have an idea of at least we got to roll with it. If nothing else, I got to roll with it because I don't want to be a dinosaur because that's what I'll be if I resist. So I'm more confident. I'm happier. I'm more content. So how do we get more of those champions? Real quickly, we got our last exercise coming up. Get the right people in the first place. Good training. Own up to past mistakes. Treat people fairly and respectfully. Open up communication. And encourage actively caring. So in this exercise, last one, as a group, I would like you to please write down at least 3 things for each column. First column, how come we don't actively care for other people? On the job, why don't we always actively care for other people? Second column, why should we? Who cares? Third column, and most importantly, so spend some time on this one, How do we get more of it? How do we increase actively caring for other people? Any questions? As a team, please discuss it again like you did the last exercise. Please have somebody write down at least 3 answers for each column. Be prepared to report out momentarily. What are some reasons why we're not always actively caring for others? Would y'all say? Don't have time. I hear that. I don't have time. I'm too busy. Yeah. You may be getting more and more stuff every day, too. What else? Burnout. Yeah, man. Is your industry high for burnout? The type of work? I would imagine. Again, that's my... Yes, I'm burned out, man. Doing this too long. Anything else? I'm sorry? That's right. That's a good point. That's a good point. If I don't feel appreciated around here for all the good stuff I'm doing, to heck with it. I'm not looking out for you either. Absolutely. Absolutely. Any other reasons? So you may have some selfishness out there too. I mean, that's the truth. You may just have people that only care about themselves. They're not trying to help out anybody else. They're doing their own thing, and that's the end of it. Yep. I'm starting to get depressed. We've got to move on here in a second. Any other reasons? So I'm thinking, there are a lot of people like that. Any other reasons? Okay, maybe a trust issue. Okay, maybe I'm just worried about myself. Could be that confrontation issue too. Sometimes that can be a problem. Any other reasons? Okay, maybe not. Maybe that's a cultural thing. That's not how we do things around here. Okay, right. There's no accountability. This is a longer list than I'm usually hearing. I'm just pointing that out. I don't know what that means, but anything else? All right, let's go to the next one then. Despite all that, why should we? Why should we be looking out for other people, going out of our way to help out others? Yeah, it's the right thing to do. Maybe it's a moral issue. It's the right thing to do. Good. What else? See, are y'all working together? That's a cohesive answer. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And if you're working as a team, you guys are together all the time. Guys, it's a whole lot more pleasant if we're all looking out for each other. And I agree with your comment a second ago. If people aren't looking out for me, to heck with it. Do your own thing. But if I believe people are looking out for me, I'll go out of my way for you. If it's so, especially in team environments, I really think that's a good one. It helps you, even if that's not your intention. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Again, remember that slide I showed earlier? 100% of people almost say you should look out and tell somebody if they're being risky. Just over half actually do. That's a big gap. I mean, that's a big difference. And I think that's part of it is we're reluctant to. So if I'm more open to speaking up, less likely you're going to get hurt or I'm going to get hurt. Any other reasons? Okay, good. Good. And again, that communication, that affects safety, quality, everything. Morale, turnover, burnout, all that stuff. Any other answers on why we should be? We're getting lots of good ones with this one too. Now here's the tough one. How do we get more of it? Now that's the question. We know it's tough. We know it's the right thing to do. How do we get more actively caring on the job? So getting people, and I tell you what, I did this years ago when I was a social worker, working with tough kids, trouble kids, and tough kids. We did one of those outward bound things out in the woods. Have y'all ever done one? Raise your hand if you've done one of something like that. A lot. That's a pretty high number. What did y'all think of that? Did y'all like it? I loved it. I was just out of college, and I thought this is the stupidest thing ever. We're going to go play in the woods. But I was getting my $5.25 an hour, so I'm like, all right, I'm in. Let's go. It was amazing. It was life-changing. I'm not kidding. We did this one thing where you're like holding each other, this trust thing. I came back. I'm like, I love everybody, I'm serious. I like our little cottage. I'm like, man, it was really, I'm not kidding. It was that powerful. It was one of those things where if we are collectively as a group and do some of the team building stuff, maybe a little outside the job, some of that stuff can be really powerful if it's done the right way. So, and again, I think it's night and day. Y'all know from your own experiences if you've had good and bad work groups, the difference. It's huge. That's good. What else? Any other ways to get more actively caring? Okay, improve the workflow. You may... Good. And proper planning. And again, some of it may be scheduling outside of your control. Some of it may be in your control. I think that's where a lot of frustration lies. Sorry? Right, good. Setting the right example. Good. I think that's underappreciated. We think it's all flowery, all touchy-feely. It just works. I mean, we do it for production in normal, organizational settings. You get praise for that. You maybe get praise for getting things knocked out. Do you get praise for safety? Maybe not. You may go a long time without a thank you, nice job, appreciate it for safety. Yeah, that's good, and that's hard, isn't it? I mean, I think it's hard, especially if you've been doing it for a long time. It's like you don't always see that stuff. You kind of get locked in on your own little thing, and you're not seeing the big picture. I think it would be tough, especially if I'm tired. Huh? Okay. I agree. Yeah, that's really irritating. All of a sudden, it's an emergency. Yeah, thanks. Anything else? I'm going to show you one more slide, and then we'll do a final Q&A. Just some considerations. Near-miss reporting, and I know I said this earlier, but I want to sum up with the system. Near-miss reporting should be frequent. It should be open. You shouldn't get in trouble for it. If a name's on there, that's great. We can fix the situation. And again, how you define near-miss may impact the discussion. As I see it, like pallets fall overhead. Could have hit somebody, could have hurt them. Didn't, but I write something down as a near-miss. Company puts stacking pallets, you know what I mean by those wooden pallets? Stick them outside. Fine, no one's going to get hurt now. That's a good example, I think, of a near-miss reporting. Minor injury reporting, whether it's the person, the patient, or yourself. I don't know what you all do with minor injury reporting, but again, that's another thing. We shouldn't have 6 miles of paperwork to do, and I shouldn't be worried I'm going to get in trouble if I report a minor injury. Incident analysis, we talked about looking at the system instead of just blaming somebody. Safety rules need to make sense. I don't know what y'all have in terms of safety rules. They should be followed, but they should be simple. They should make sense. They should be done, at least in part, with someone that actually does the work. And somebody's, not to knock anybody. Sometimes rules are made in an office real far away from where the actual work happens. You know what I mean? The training, like we said, the computer-based is a supplement, but you should be doing interactive training. And then employee involvement. If we can get more of that's a good thing too. There are various systems. The behavior-based safety, I think, we talked about with those cards. If you can get nurses, doctors, anybody, if we get more people doing those cards, that maybe, if it's done right, that may be a good way to focus more on safety. So we've got time for a minute or two of Q&A. We have 2 minutes? All right, so 2 minutes. Any questions or comments from anything we've talked about in terms of safety behaviors, safety checklists, communication skills, person factors, or safety management systems? Is that it? I didn't do a good job in having any questions. Well, if you have any other questions, I'll be doing a signing thing over there. Thank you all very much. Have a good rest of the